I'm Michael Bell with the CVB Challenge, the Christ Verse Per Book Challenge. We're looking at all 66 books of the Bible and showing how Jesus Christ is the center of each of these books when we properly understand the message of the book. Now, we're in the Minor Prophets and we've reached the prophet Nahum. And Nahum is a 3-chapter book that's primarily about the destruction of the city of Nineveh. It said, "Wasted is Nineveh, who will grieve for her?" Chapter 3, verse 7. Now, what does the destruction of Nineveh have to do with the Messiah? Well, we need to understand that this city is emblematic of everything that Christ is against. In other words, the city of Nineveh stands as a rebellious city in opposition to everything that Christ represents. Now, this goes back way back in history when we can actually trace this back to Cain. When Cain kills his brother Abel, God kicks him out and he goes east to the land of Nod, and there he builds the city of Enoch. And Cain never repents. He's a man who hates God, and he builds a city in defiance of God. And the city of Enoch represents, look what I can do as a man. And so it represents, on the one hand, the great achievements that man can accomplish apart from God, but also the great wickedness that entails. And after the flood, then we have a similar figure in the person of Nimrod, who builds cities. He builds Nineveh and Babel in the Mesopotamian Valley, otherwise known at that time as the plain of Shinar. And he comes in the same spirit, that rebellious spirit. And we see both of these as candidates of the seed of the serpent prophesied about in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, the one who will be opposed to the seed of Eve. And then as we move on through history, we see that the Assyrians resurrect Nineveh, make Nineveh their capital. This is the famous city where Jonah goes to prophesy. Following them, the Chaldeans set up Babylon, another city in the same general region, as their capital. The Medo-Persians set up Susa as their capital. And then, of course, the Roman Empire has Rome as its capital. And what all these cities have in common is that they are the seat and capital of a figure who is an Antichrist figure. In other words, it's a figure bent on world domination, on becoming rich, on forcing everyone to worship him. And this city is the epitome and greatest proof of their greatness. So this will be the capital city of a worldwide empire. At least that's how they envision themselves and what they want to be. And prophecy then talks about how the Roman Empire then is the last in the succession. Daniel talks about the Greek Empire, the Medo-Persian, and the Babylonian, but also then the Roman Empire as the culmination. Now, as we look at the book of Revelation, then what all these cities personify and embody is known as the Whore of Babylon. And she rides atop the beast, who is the Antichrist, in the book of Revelation. So we see how closely wedded is the beast and this city that he's constructed. They work together. And we don't know exactly where that city is going to be. You notice that these cities are in all a little bit different spots geographically, but yet spiritually they're one and the same. They're the great Whore of Babylon, this city that is bent on world domination, that's full of riches and full of great human achievements. We can expect a city with tremendous architecture and tremendous works of engineering. Just like all these cities that were the precursors of that great city that the Antichrist will rule from. Now, on the other side of the ledger, then we see a different kind of city. First of all, we see the altars built by the patriarchs as a place where God was dwelling among men, where God and man met together and, in a sense, had a conversation around the same table. And we see this idea building. For example, Jacob, one of the patriarchs, he has a dream and he has this rock that he's made as his pillow. And then he turns that rock over or stands it up, anoints it, and he says, house of God. Again, we're beginning to see this idea of perhaps a city of righteousness. And then the book of Hebrews elucidates for us that even Abraham was looking for a city that has foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And the tabernacle then was kind of a temporary city, wasn't it? But it showed God dwelling among men, and these are righteous men. This is not a city full of iniquity and defiance of God, but rather what man can achieve when he lives in harmony with God under the headship of God. And then finally, in the days of David, the ark enters Jerusalem. God says, this is the place where I'm going to build my temple. This is the place where I'm going to establish my Messiah. This will be his capital city. And by the time we read Psalm 2, we see that he's going to defend Zion against all the nations, because this is the capital city of Messiah. And from this city, elevated higher than all the other cities and all the other mountains of the world, will be Christ's universal kingdom, but one that's not done in defiance of God, but in cooperation with God, in harmony with God. It too will be full of riches and full of glorious marvels and wonders, but ones that have been achieved not with an angry fist to God saying, look what I can do apart from you, and look, I don't need you, but rather a city that welcomes God, that credits God with even man's own accomplishments, because where did we get our intelligence from except from God himself? And with Messiah reigning, he's the great one that bridges this gap between God and man so that God can dwell among men. And so this is the significance of Nahum 3:7. That Nineveh will be destroyed. And for a parallel, just go to Revelation 18, where it's called Babylon. But again, whether we call it Rome, Babylon, Nineveh, Enoch, whatever name we give this city, it is destroyed once for all to make way for this capital city, the seat of government of the Messiah, who will reign in peace and who will reign in righteousness forever and ever. Now, if Jesus is on every page of the Bible, shouldn't he be on every page of your life and mine?